Very welcome to all of you. I would like to quickly introduce our speaker for the afternoon, Mr. Kilan Haria, and then we'll be good to go. For all those of you who can hear me, Kilan brings with him over 10 years of leadership experience with an expertise in driving product-driven product development from concept to launch and building data-driven decision-making systems with a BTech from NIT Durgapur and a PGP from ISB Hyderabad. Kilan has worked with brands like Cisco, Yahoo, and Tribo Hotels in product focused roles and is currently serving Razorpay, a unicorn fintech startup that needs no introduction, as vice president and head of payments product. So, very excited to have you with us, Kilan, and request you to take it ahead.
Hi Prashant, thank you for hosting me. Welcome everyone. We'll try and keep this short in terms of the one-way, gyan from me, and we'll look forward to a lot of questions and interactions. Post the first 15-20 minutes of small content that I have. Do let me know, if at any point in time, if you have questions, feel free to, either raise your hand or post on chat. I'm going to quickly share a small deck. Folks, I think I will try and spend some time, giving you all a flavor of what are the different type of PM roles out there. What do product managers do on a day-to-day basis? And what does it take to break into the PM function as a career? So I think to begin with, at a very high level, and pardon me for poor slides, trying to repurpose some of the content I have. There are three type of PM roles out there. There is a small difference in how every company thinks of product management. Having said that, most companies have generalist product managers. That is the most common role out there, where to summarize, the role of a PM is problem solver in chief. Identify what your customers' problems are, work with everyone internally, tech, design, marketing, business, operations, legal, anyone and everyone to solve the problems. Now, another flavor to this is a platform product manager role, where the problems by nature are more technology heavy. To give you a flavor of that, let us say if the problem that we're trying to solve is to provide a robust pricing infrastructure to our customers so that they can price their offerings well, right? This will be extremely technology heavy, system heavy problem that we need to solve for our customers. So a lot of SaaS companies have a lot of platform PM roles as they're solving a lot of complex, system heavy, technology heavy problems for their customers. The last one is, business PM. Sometimes there is a large overlap between the generalist PM and the business PM role. But a lot of companies earlier used to have a business PM role separately from a technical PM role. And in that case, the business product managers are mostly, spending most of their energies and efforts on understanding problem and, taking solutions to go to market. And the technical product managers are helping them bridge the gap in, translating their problems into solutions and into actual products. I mean, as I described, the third role is not very common today. First and second role are very, very common, and more often than not, a PM today operates as a full stack product manager who needs to be a jack of all trade, understand a bit of technology, a bit of data, design, sales, marketing, anything and everything, and also spike in a few areas, which then gives them advantage in what type of problems they could solve. The other big part of a PM role is it's a high impact role, as many of you know, but it's a role which entails making decisions every day. So it's at the center of the role is decision making. Day in and day out, product manager is faced with choices, and sometimes not enough time or enough insights or enough research to pick an answer and pick a decision. Right? It is a very decision making heavy role, and it's very important because in the absence of someone like a PM to drive a lot of decisions, things can be very slow in many organizations. At a high level, there are many type of decisions the PM makes, but a decision can be as simple as what should be our strategy going forward, or there is a new opportunity that has come up in a brainstorming session. Should we pick it? Can we quickly size how large this opportunity can be? Does it strategically align with the organization's vision? What should be the roadmap that we chase, which is what kind of innovations we build in a given quarter? Again, is another decision. There are generally hundreds of ideas, and you can only build a few. On a day-to-day basis, you're thrown with different kind of new ideas, sometimes bugs, sometimes enhancements, sometimes potential business problems, and you got to figure out that how do you disrupt your plan, make space for this if it makes sense. And last one is, your product, no matter how solid it is in the internet world, it isn't, built for, 100% error proof or bug free scenarios. So there are things that keep breaking in your offering, and you want to figure out, which ones do you solve, which ones do you kind of, delay or wait for. So at the heart of it, it is a role where you just got to constantly prioritize, constantly, keep making decisions. And not all decisions are going to be right. Not all decisions have to be right, but you need to understand the art and science behind decision making and be very, very comfortable to make decisions in a short amount of time, and sometimes the information. I think the other key thing is to kind of give you all a view on, what do PMs do on a day-to-day basis. So once you identify an initiative or a project that you kind of, believe will, be impactful and will help, solve a customer problem, what are the typical, stages that you go through? I think the first is, before you identify a project is you got to identify what is your customer's core problem. There are many, many problems. Which ones make sense to you? So you got to prioritize them. There is strategic prioritization, there is tactical prioritization. And you got to figure out, how do you put together the right solution? How do you conceptualize, a robust product or a process solution that helps solve the customer's problem? There is, after all of this thing, is when you get into the build phase, where you collaborate very closely, generally with engineering and design, to launch an offering. And post that is when you again collaborate more with business facing teams, frontline teams, sometimes support, sometimes customers directly, to take this product to market, call it go to market, launch strategy, launch plan, launch execution. And then at the end of all of this, you try and figure out that, identify the core problem, whether the problem is solved or not. If not, go back into the same loop again. And the reason I was kind of trying to give you all some view of, to assess if, someone can be a good PM in a short amount of time, who can do some of these things that I was trying to describe, is not very easy. And its hiring managers have a tough time typically. So I'll kind of now give you a flavor of, typically what type of, skills are assessed. How many interviews should you expect if you want to kind of break into a PM role? What's the right way to prepare for some of these, if you'd like to? So I think to begin with, it's a tough role from the perspective of how the role is designed. It is one of the few roles in the corporate world today where you necessarily are not bringing a hard skill. So give you a view, your engineer is actually bringing a hard skill of building a product, coding, testing. Your designer is designing and offering and giving the design specs to your engineer. Your sales guy is actually converting a lead or finding a lead and then making actual revenue. But a product manager doesn't do any of these, what we call hard skills or something tangible. So it is an intangible role, which is why a lot of companies still operate without a PM. But there is a lot of difference between good outcome and great outcomes. And when you have a PM orchestrating the entire, process or machinery, you can actually bridge the gap between good and great, and you can get to great customer and business outcomes. And this is why a lot of modern companies, especially technology first, internet first companies, have product managers who essentially become the glue to everything that's happening now. And if PMs need to be the glue, they need to be able to communicate with every single function in the company. They need to speak the language to some extent. They need to be able to influence them. They also shouldn't be fooled by them. So there's a thin line between all of these things. So which is why a lot of the interview process or assessment process is revolving around understanding which are the skills you are good at to be able to have a meaningful conversation, and which are the skills you are really good at or spike at, where you could ideally have been in that function if you are not doing PM, right? So typical skills that are assessed are: how are you on product thinking, which is also customer facing thinking? How are you on problem solving? How are you on understanding of business, understanding of data analytics? You kind of understand a bit of technology, and more importantly, more than anything else, I think soft skills. I think do you have ownership hunger? Are you someone who can both find answers, ask questions, as well as get things done? Do you have bias for action? Do you think customer first, or do you think answer first? So there are a lot of these soft skills that matter a lot more than the hard skills, because the role is fundamentally difficult, and it is a role where you put in tough spots day in and day out, and hence it's not the right role for everyone. There are a lot of soft skills or characteristics of persona that you need to have to be able to succeed in this role. Yeah, and I think the last thing is, I think the first round typically, if you were to interview, will focus a lot on combination of multiple things. But in product management, typically will focus on how relevant is your past exposure to the product management role, and Do you have the raw smartness or problem solving skills to, be able to identify problems, identify solutions in a very short span of time when you put on the spot? Sometimes there are guesstimates that are done as well to do opportunity sizing, because you are in real world scenarios put in, brainstorming sessions where the business counterpart will come and raise some good ideas, or a customer will raise some good ideas. Can we quickly do back of the envelope, guesstimates to size the opportunity landscape? Does it make sense for us, or can we let go of it? I think, and basic customer facing product thinking, like can you solve a customer problem end to end? What would it take? Do you have the basic understanding of how you would do that? Yeah, I'm going to try and summarize, some of this thing, and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A. So I think if you are, interested in getting into or breaking into product management, I think the first thing is you got to ask yourself the question whether you have the right persona to make into product management. Do you like closing things, getting things to completion? Do you like spending a lot of time figuring out the why behind the what? And hey, my company is building XYZ, but why are they doing it? How does it benefit the customer? How does it benefit the business? Do you like looking at P&L, business metrics, balance sheets, all of that? Yeah, and then if all of that is there, then what would it take to succeed in the role is that you will think backward from customer. Always, when you are faced with a problem, idea, brainstorming deep dive, think about the customer. Who's the customer? How many such customers exist? What are the different personas? How is it going to help them? Spend enough time on problem. This is one thing that most other functions don't. They are all solution oriented. They are trying to find an answer. Your job is to find the problem, find the right problem, right? And everyone else will then help you find the right answer if you don't know. Think business first, and look for alternates as much as possible. Kind of stay fixated on one part. I think that's I've got a lot of stuff in appendix, but I'll pause on that. Stop sharing my screen, open up the floor for questions, and then accordingly happy to pull the slides back in case if there's a theme of questions I'm seeing. The first one, I am not the founder of Razorpay, so it was not my idea. The organization's been around now for 6 years. I have been Razorpay for a couple of years now. The idea of Razorpay primarily came around to the founding team when they were solving a problem in a not-for-profit space where they wanted to build an aggregated platform to kind of bridge the gap between donors and folks who wanted some help. And they realized that they struggled to get access to a good payment solution. They went around, looked in the market, and saw a lot of problems with what was existing, including access to payment solutions, democratization. There was a lot of red tape involved, and also the ability to integrate or complexity around that. We saw a lot of problems in that space, and that is when the founders decided to pivot from building a not-for-profit platform to a payments company. And glad that they did it, because I could firsthand see several of these problems in the last decade as I worked with pretty much every single payment company as a customer, and I could relate to a lot of the problems they were solving, and some of that we may have to make some good dent. Okay, I'm going to take the next one. Aren't you going to get picked into product management if we don't have any prior experience? That is not true. See, product management is generally a role where typically you will not see freshers with zero experience. Most professionals will build or learn about business, learn about some specific function where they will build some hard skills, tangible skills, and then they will mostly get excited about some of the things I spoke about, knowing the why behind what they're doing, understanding business, speaking to customers, and those are the kind of folks who gravitate into product management roles internally. So most folks I know generally start their career either in technology or in design, business, one of these roles, and then over time they have the hunger to do what PMs do, and then that is how they kind of move into PM. Very rarely do you see someone starting his career as a product manager. There are folks that do, but that is generally a smaller minority, and those kind of openings are far and few. So suggestion is that if you don't have any prior experience, break into one of the functions first. It could be data analytics, it could be business, it could be design, depending on your skill sets, data science as well. And then later you kind of internally typically move into product management. If you do have some experience in some of these areas, I think that it is really possible. And getting a spike in terms of business education does help on some of the skill sets that are expected in the PM role. Okay, folks, if there are follow-up questions, do ask, and I'll try and share my point of view. I think the third one is typically what kind of remuneration can be expected? What does it depend on? I think remuneration varies from each company to company. Typically in India, a product manager who's just breaking into the PM role can command as low as 10 lakhs, can command as high as 35, 40 lakhs. So it could vary widely. and it varies because of the expectation of the role from the company and the organization itself. It could vary in terms of the level at which you start as well. So remuneration is very wide and typically can't be generalized. I'm going to move to the next one. Veena Singh has a question on, I'm currently pursuing data science and want to build my career as a product manager. I haven't done my MBA. Is a data science going to be helpful in pursuing this without doing an MBA? It does. I think like Veena, like I spoke about, any functional experience, irrespective of an MBA, is something that is a great asset to have when you want to do product management. Some of these functions, help you prepare for this role, and you need to ask a question to yourself whether you will actually like the PM role, right? If you do, then I think it is definitely possible. A lot of analysts, a lot of data scientists actually break into PM without an MBA. A lot of them at Razorpay have moved from analytics into product management. We typically don't see data scientists interested in PM just because data sciences itself is a very hot career stream right now, possibly, more than product management. But generally data folks do move in and they make good PMs as well for a lot of data heavy problems. And eventually as they learn their transition into general, other type of problems as well beyond data. Veena, assume, this got addressed for you. If not, do raise a follow-up again. Saurabh Kushwaha has a question. How can working professionals create invent projects to showcase their skills of product management and business consultant, work and support team, which is an impacting role? Saurabh, I think one of the things I will recommend is typically, if the best way to change function, anything to anything, is to change it in the same company. So if the organization you're working at has PM roles, then there is a chance that there is an opportunity for everyone to move internally as long as you show the right signs of it. At Razorpay, we had people from our technical support team moving to product management. So what we see, that kind of makes a difference is, these kind of folks typically will not ask for the role to be formally assigned. They will start doing what PMs are doing partially. They will start showing those signs and helping the existing PMs. And that is how they learn the tricks of the trade. And then at some point, if there is an opportunity, the PM team kind of loves to consume them. So don't wait for the role to formally be there for you. Start playing the role of PM as much as possible. Go and ask your PMs if you can help them with the problem. If you see a problem, try and do what your PMs would do. Maybe build a PRD, build a spec, help them get access to data, help them, with analysis, impact assessment, what problem discovery, all of that. So I think the best way to break into a PM role is to start playing the role, without formally moving in, and then slowly everyone starts appreciating and they will formally make you a PM. I'm going to move to the next one. Venkata Arvind has a question. I'm from Automobile R&D. Aim is to be a PM in the automotive sector. What is the skill set I have to develop to be a successful and smooth transition from R&D background to PM role? Venkata, to be very honest, I am not the right expert to guide on this. I think the PM role varies a lot in the hardware industry compared to the internet first industry or technology industry that I'm a part of, right? The expectations vary a lot as to what PMs do. So I think you should take advice and guidance from someone who's been in the automobile space, who's spent a lot of time there to understand what the roles are, what the responsibilities are. But yeah, I think in the same industry, it is definitely doable, is what I've seen in the past with a lot of friends and peers. Sorry, couldn't help here. I think you should seek some advice and guidance from folks who be part of this industry. I have an anonymous question. When it comes to data analytics, which languages should one focus on more? I assume the question is more around technical languages such as Python, etc. See, I think for a product manager, you don't need to know any of these specifics. The more you know, the better it is. Then you can have a more easy and meaningful conversation with your analyst. If you know SQL, great, you can pull data on your own. If you know a bit of Python, you can do some complex analytics as well. If you don't know, if you know R, you can do some other. If you know SAS, you can do some other, right? So the more you can have a more fluent and a more easy conversation with your analytics team or data science team, and you can influence them. At the heart of the role is how do you influence your peers and stakeholders? Because once you found the right answer, you're not going to execute the answer. Your team's going to help execute the answer. Sometimes they even help to find the answer, right? Your ability to influence every other function of the company is extremely important. From that perspective, the more you know about a function, typically the easier it is for you to influence them. They will see you as one of them. So I think that is what I would kind of recommend. Otherwise, if you're talking about pure, what will help in product management, then focus on what PMs would do. That from data, what are the problems you can infer? From data, what are the optimizations you suggest that the company should make? What are the innovations? Or what are the enhancements, iterations company should do? How do you figure out whether a new launch is working or not by looking at data. So think more about the why and then not about the what. If you ask me, analytics from a PM perspective. I'm going to take the next one again. Anonymous. Do we need to be necessarily good in coding or understand code to be a good PM? I don't think so. I think, like I mentioned, the more you know about a function or as many functions as you can, easier it is for you to break into PM. Because PM primarily is a influencing and a decision-making role. And if you cannot influence, you will struggle to succeed, which means you got to know a little bit about technology, but you need to be actually implementing. No. If I were to zoom out and suggest what you need to know to be a successful product manager, and it's not all needed at an entry level, but as you scale in the career, is the ability to ask the right questions, even if you don't know the right answer. So I think that is what is more important. For example, if you are a PM and if your engineer comes and tells you that, hey, you got a great problem for me and a great solution, it's going to take 2 months for me to build. Can you have a meaningful conversation with him to ensure you don't get fooled? Alternately, if you propose a problem and your engineer comes back, this is not even feasible to be done. And you have a meaningful conversation and suggest him, can we try XYZ? Have you thought along those lines, etc. Right? So that is when these folks will respect you. And you will be able to succeed in the role of influencing, your technology or engineering counterparts. Moving next one, I'm starting the junior data analyst sciences role. What are the skills required for managing product in the AI ML space? It's an interesting one. Honestly, I have done this for only 2 or 3 goals or initiatives in my PM career, so I don't have a lot of exposure in solving data science problems as a PM. The ones I've done are largely around recommendation, pricing, kind of problems which are heavily math optimization problems. I think the skill set required to manage a product and skill set required to become a PM is generally the same. Having said that, if the problem you're trying to solve for your customer is that, or the solution to the problem is going to be through data or data science, then absolutely you need to have a spike in data science. For example, the product manager who's trying to solve for pricing at Flipkart or Amazon, he definitely is doing price prediction, price optimizations, competition pricing, all of that to figure out what's the right strategy to price the offerings and products. Needs to understand and empathize data science. So there are a lot of data science heavy PM roles. Could be recommendations, could be in many other fields that you can apply data science. Advertising is one such area. So knowing and understanding data science is going to be a massive advantage for a data science heavy PM role. At the same time, there are design heavy PM roles. There are technology heavy PM roles, like I spoke about the platform PM role. All, let's say, a lot of roles for the PM who's managing the homepage of Flipkart or Amazon. I think it's a very design heavy PM role. So having a bit of know-how about design will be kind of advantageous. So depending on the nature of the role, the interview process is tailored a little bit, and they check for spike on one of these areas, either design or data science, technology, or it could be sales, marketing as well. If you are trying to be a growth product manager, where your role is going to be new customer acquisition, then you got to understand digital marketing. So this is something that could get tested in the interview, and then having a spike on all of these functions helps you break into the PM role, which are very specific person. I'm going to take the next question from Dattatreya. I am from operations and supply chain background. With over 4 years, I do have a bit of PM experience, mainly product pricing in an e-commerce firm. Is it possible for me to shift my industry into a product management role? Dattatreya, from the little I could read, you mentioned that you already have PM experience. I think that generally helps. I think when you are in the same function, it's always easier to move companies or move industries, right? So definitely easier. The trayaka that I was taught by my mentors was that it's tougher to move function, geography, and company, all 3 together. You typically can move one out of the move in one of these 3 and not in all of these. So in your case, if you already have PM exposure, changing industry is a lot easier. If not, you could try PM roles in the same industry where your industry know-how and background will be appreciated. So overall, definitely it's possible. Should keep focusing and keep giving a shot. Next one is from Saurabh Kushwaha. A live example of Razorpay using data to derive decisions. Many companies just convert a business case to functional UI. I know it's definitely a valid argument. We use a lot of data in a lot of decisions at Razorpay. I will give you some small examples. Right? We have an offering called ThirdWatch, which is a core data science product where we are trying to predict the probability of an order being returned. We call it return to origin. Then we help customers make the right choices This is powered by data science, where all the decisions are through data in the offering itself. We've got also a product which helps when a payment is received, payment request is received by Razorpay from its business or merchant. We got to figure out which bank do we send this to, or which downstream system do we send this to, and sometimes we've got multiple options to send it to. So it's again an optimization problem as to where do we send for it to be more successful. We again apply data science over there. In terms of day-to-day decision making, we are extremely data heavy. So every time we build a plan or a roadmap, or we look at a problem, we also look at how deep the problem is, what are the metrics through which we can validate if this problem actually exists, and if we were to solve this problem, what are the metrics we look at to confirm if the problem actually got solved. So there is a lot of data that is used to figure out the opportunity landscape / the quantum of the problem, and then also metrics used to understand the problem is genuine. I can take some live example. When NPCI launched UPI recurring recently, we were trying to understand whether we should, invest in this and be the launch partner. Because being the launch partner means that you are going to have to work a lot more because the product is not finished. But are there advantages we would get if we were to do it, right? So we looked at data in terms of how many of our customers need recurring. What are the problems in recurring that they face today? Will UPI recurring solve for any of those problems? If these things kind of turn out to be true from data, and the problem could be as simple as that on debit card the conversion rates are poor because the risk engines decline a lot of transactions. On UPI, that may not be because it's a compliant engine. So that is where we then build the hypothesis, validate the hypothesis, and then we go into taking the decision to actually build a solution, validate the solution, and then we kind of launch it, and then again do impact assessment to understand if our assumption and hypothesis understanding was right or not. I'm going to move to the next one. You mentioned learning soft skills such as ownership and urgency, how to develop these soft skills. Honestly, it's tough to develop these soft skills. It's not impossible. It is always difficult. I think fundamentally a lot of these soft skills kind of translate to who you are as a persona, as an individual. What do you do by default? So I think a lot of these by nature are supposed to be personality traits that you have or you don't have. Can you build a few of these traits? You can, but will you enjoy? May or may not. So ownership, of course, you can start demonstrating by owning more things. And as simple as if there is a project or an initiative or a festival that's running, can you be more involved? Can you volunteer? Can you own certain goals and outcomes over there? All of these are signs that you are willing to go out of your way and do things and one thing. You can demonstrate it by that. Urgency, are you someone who can get things done? So you got to start figuring that out. Do you have bias for action or not? Communication skills are important because you want to influence people. So that is something that can definitely be built. Influencing skills can be built. There is some science behind some of these. So some of these are traits that either you have, you don't have, and you can build, but you may not like it. So I think all of these you can go deeper into the 5-6 soft skills that matter in the PM role. There's enough, I think, literature available for you to develop and build these concepts. So Yash has a question: if you can explain real life scenario of how product management operates, so we can have a practical picture of the role. So Yash, I don't know if I fully understood the question, but let me try and take a stab at it, and feel free to ask a follow-up question if it's not answered. I think fundamentally, first of all, anyone who's not in the PM role typically has a very different understanding of what the role is, right? And typically, it's a rosy picture. Most folks who are not into PM and are looking at PM from the other side like to believe that it is a role where I will, get to be the decision maker. I will get to spend time with customers, and I will get to build amazing PPTs or business strategy, and I will be the CEO of the product and all of that, right? I think the realities are very different. I think all of this you get to do, but it is only 10-20% of your job. The remaining part of your job is a lot of grunt work in actually making things happen. One of the key things the PM does, or let me try and split the day-to-day responsibilities of a PM. So at the very top is strategy roadmap, where you are trying to figure out the problem itself that you're going to solve for your customers. Does it make sense for your company? How does it tie back? What is the vision, mission? What are the goals? And to achieve these goals, what are the set of innovations or projects you can kind of work upon, build, iterate upon? So once you look at strategy, OKRs, roadmap, then you come to what I call conceptualization and solutioning. Can you put together a robust solution towards the problems you prioritize for your customers? Once you do this, you get into requirements. Can you translate the solution into language your technology design teams or business teams are understanding. You do that, then you have to work very closely with all of these folks to actually execute and implement the solutions. And things can break day in and day out on what is live. So your customers can come and shout at you again. It's your job to understand why, identify any challenge before a customer does, solve for these challenges. So there is a lot of what we call day-to-day, product owner responsibilities, where you are just figuring out what does it take for the product to survive and for us to build new things. So this is what we call product execution as well. And there is go-to-market, where you go, spend time figuring out how can we pitch this to customers, drive adoption, traction, get business results, etc. Look at data day in and day out. A lot of PMs spend 20-30 minutes a day only looking at data to understand how the product is doing. Some of them rely on opening dashboard. Some of them rely on pushing an email or a Slack alert when there is a change in the metric. So there are multiple ways people find their own sweet spot to do some of these things. But net the role is you are the decision maker, but you don't have the authority. And it's kind of counterintuitive. You get the ability to drive decisions, but you go to influence people. You want to help everyone sell the decision. A lot of times, not all the times. It's not about leading by authority, it's about leading by influence. This is one of the reasons you're seeing a lot of new age CEOs coming from the product management trajectory. I'm going to move to the next one. Which skill set do we need to change? Do we need to focus on to change our career to product management? I think I already addressed this in the PPT. Happy to ask. You can ask me a follow up. I'm happy to kind of go deeper into which of the ones you're looking to kind of. Veena saying, can an entrepreneur be called a PM? I am also looking at the opportunity starting my business. How can design thinking help in my role as a PM? Oh, absolutely. I think entrepreneur is generally, the PM on day one, because you're trying to figure out, do what a PM does. And over time, you will then pass on this responsibility formally to a PM. So I think at most companies, like even at Razorpay, one of our founders played the role of a PM until we were at 50 engineers. We didn't have a single PM. And that is when we realized that now founder cannot scale this culture. Someone has to play the founder's role or what he was doing in terms of figuring out customer problems. How does it make sense to our business? How do we prioritize? How do we actually execute on the plan? And then, how do we create success out of it and keep doing this day in and day out? So I think that is when then our company had created a PM function formally, and a lot of companies I know kind of take this approach, including Flipkart in the early days. Founders played the PM role, and then everyone else in the company fills in for part of what the PM does. But a lot of the heavy lifting is done by the founders or the entrepreneurs themselves. It will definitely help you, Veena, if you're looking to start your own business. You will learn a lot of things as a PM, and I know a lot of PMs who, after their experience in product management, go out to start their own company. I have a question, anonymous one again. How much role of PM is overlapping with marketing roles? It depends. Not every PM role will overlap a lot of marketing roles, but if you are into growth product management, if you are into a consumer heavy PM role, then it will overlap a lot with marketing, both traditional marketing and digital marketing. So if you are, let's say, the PM of Flipkart's homepage, hypothetically, then you might be responsible for conversion, traffic, SEO, SEM, all of those things, for which you need to learn a little bit about digital marketing. So it depends upon the role itself, as to how much importance do you have to marketing. If it's a consumer heavy or design heavy PM role, and internet heavy, in some sense, then there is an angle of marketing typically. Vasav Raj has a question: what should be the market strategy when the product is new to customers, and how to get their trust? It's a very open-ended, very broad question. I'll try and take a stab. I think the strategy is very simple, right? You go to solve a genuine problem for your customers, and if you are solving a genuine problem, then you go to have the art to storytell this thing to your customers and convince them. And that is how you win their trust, if you are actually solving their genuine problem. If you are not, and you've sold them a story which is not even partially true, then you will lose their trust. So I think that is typically the approaches you have. A lot of practical strategies where we call early adoption, alpha customers, get their feedback, get their testimonials, use that to scale it in the market. So a lot of day-to-day tactics that people apply to kind of take new products to market, to get early feedback, traction, as well as then get testimonials, case studies, which can help you in scaling your offering. Sometimes early customers are given this at a discount or for free or free trial to try it out, so that we can get their feedback and then scale in the market. There's one, I think this is a repeat question. I'll skip a few more. How will Masters Union help us in product management versus courses from Upgrad? Honestly, Saurabh, I'm not the right person to answer. Prashant, I will let you kind of take this one if you're okay.
The two aren't really comparable because and Upgrad and many others in the same league, are more of an online repository of content, and you can engage with what they have to offer on the go, while you're carrying on with your regular work life. While Masters Union is an academic institution, so you sign up to be a full-time student, and the learning lies in being out there, in the classroom with your peers, with the masters, with active intervention from the industry. And it's a master-led program, so just like Kiran had been here all through, talking about his own experience and enriching your perspective through that. I think that's really the flavor of the program. So everything from product management to consulting to fintech to operations and a lot more really is brought to you, and it is added I mean, it enriches your academic and professional and practical understanding of how things work, because you're learning it straight from people who are out in the industry making things happen, making the pieces come together and move. And of course, it's all supported further by an academic framework. So I think being in a business school is a completely different ball game, and there you have the luxury of indulging in it for 16 straight months, and learn on the go, and be prepared to be in the industry, where you finally have the opportunity to put to use what you've learned. Also, I mean, there's a larger tech focus, so whatever you are learning, so you're not learning merely finance but fintech, not merely marketing, but how big data and data analytics could power that. So I think, yeah, that's all from me regarding this. I would request you to take it over.
Thanks, Prashant. Yeah, I think all the questions have been addressed. Happy to take any more if folks have.
Right. So now that we are talking, Kiran, I had a bunch of questions, but I'll probably, in the interest of time, ask a couple. There's this one pattern which is emerging a lot in terms of young people looking to make a career switch, looking to pursue a full-time program in, joining a B school, or generally, transitioning. The pandemic and the way it has impacted our lives, and the way companies work, the way it would impact the future of work. How do you think that would have an impact on, let's say, more specifically, how Razorpay chooses to operate, and what could be like a more macro level impact?
Hey, it's a very interesting question, Prashant. We're living in kind of difficult times right now. I think overall, there are a lot of challenges everyone's facing on the health and personal front. I think the strategy has been, evolving over the last, 15 months for Razorpay. We went into remote working before government formally announced last year to test out if we would break when we started seeing, signs of the pandemic. And a lot of things kind of worked smoothly, a lot of things did not. We had a lot of learnings from that 1 week before the government kind of formally announced it, and we were then mandated. We could, take that week to fix a lot of things. But yeah, it still wasn't smooth. At the heart of it is, all of us as humans are ingrained to have emotional connect, get to know people. And when you are in front of each other, there is no distraction on the monitor and the phone. There are 30 different screens that are open. So there is a clear downside to, a current framework where we are all remote. Definitely safety is important. So as an org, we continue to be remote, and we will be until things are normal. For a lot of folks in the organization, this meant that our org had to innovate on how to build engagement, how to build forums for everyone to interact, coffee discussions, water cooler discussions, how to let the stress go out, have bonding, etc. Right? We did a lot of that, continue doing that. That some of those do help, on different things, right? I think at the end of it, also ability to, or willingness to empathize that. I think doing the same role from home is difficult, especially if you are in a collaboration heavy function, where earlier you could go and speak to someone, tap on his shoulder, have a quick chat. Now you go to, schedule a call, wait for, other person's availability. Even if you don't call, someone might be busy. So I think a lot of these are things that naturally people will empathize that it takes, more time for people to do. There are some pros as well. You possibly get to, be in front of your family a little bit more, say hi multiple times if you want to spend time. get 10 minutes breaks, to spend some time with them, bond, engage, you cut your travel time. So there are some advantages as well, but there are a lot of disadvantages, and it varies from function to function. In some roles, the advantages outweigh the disadvantage. In some roles, the disadvantage outweigh the advantage. So as an organization, I think our philosophy is that we will do what is right for people. If a lot of folks are comfortable continuing remotely, even if pandemic is done, then we might have ways for them to do so. And all of these are evolving as we learn from individuals, take their feedback, understand how market is evolving. But yeah, these are challenging times, and especially for if you are a product manager, it's tough to collaborate from home.
Great. And I have another follow-up question to that. Coming back to what we're discussing today, roles of product managers. I think you've had a rather privileged ringside view of the industry because you have been in the product space, but with so many different organizations. Cisco is a complete different beast in comparison to, let's say, Tribo Hotels or Yahoo or now Razorpay. So if you could help us understand what are the broad strokes of in terms of things remaining consistent and the kind of agility it requires to move from one brand to the other, organization to the other, and continue to be great at what you're doing. I mean, what's the recipe to that? What has your experience been?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as you rightly described, I think every organization, you go to adjust to, right? So you go to understand the organization's DNA, how do you fit in over there? So there is a lot of time and energy it is needed, especially in the early days for you to get comfortable. So which is why most of us are averse to kind of moving, right? I think having said that, it kind of differs a lot if, in terms of problems you're solving, how excited you are about the problem, the people you work with. So for me, I've been very fortunate, luckily, in terms of the problems I've been chasing and the kind of folks I've worked with, I've partnered with, high quality, high caliber, and very nice, humble folks, right? So these have helped my transitions easier, helped my onboarding and ability to or time to settle down easier. But there's no right answer, and which is why I think ideally even I would like to spend a longer time, and rather than change the organization or the opportunity, unless there are genuine reasons for me to move places. So overall, it's not straightforward, and there is an overhead in the first 6 months, 12 months. You got to build trust again. You got to get to know folks. But I think the fundamental problem is you got to be excited about what you're doing, because you've got a finite life. You're spending 10, 12 hours a day. So if you're not liking what you're doing, then at the end of the day, you should think why you're doing this.
Lastly, as we have said, it's a tech-focused B school and a tech-focused program that we run at Masters Union. Glad to report that 3 of our major concentrations actually have very strong product focus. Of course, a lot of it has been put together with support from industry practitioners like you. For those listening, and amongst them, I gather are also some of our students or any student out there who has the opportunity to learn a product-based curriculum. What would be your advice? Maybe 2 things or 3 things that you would advise them to be mindful of, to be able to derive the most out of that opportunity.
Hi, sorry, you cut off in a little bit. Can you repeat that last?
Right. So the question was, what would be the 2 or 3 things that you would advise students to do if they have the opportunity to engage with a curriculum like that, where they are being taught, to work with product-based, scenarios, or product-driven, product management-based scenarios.
So make the most of it. I think real world or case study based learning is something that is very powerful, and I think make the most of your interactions. I think like any product manager, prioritize where you spend your time. But overall, I think it could be very powerful to get exposure to not just the theory, but the practical, execution or implementation of a lot of the theory that you otherwise can learn from books as well. So I think that is one advice I will have, is that participate, engage as much as possible. Don't be a passive listener, and that is how you will grasp the content as well, and then you will build the confidence to slowly start building expertise.
All right, so I guess this brings us to the very end of this interaction. But this has been a lot of fun, a lot of insights, and I'm sure they'll very soon, once we are back at the campus, we'll have an opportunity to have you inside the classroom, and where the students can benefit from all the amazing experience that you have gathered in the industry. And yeah, I'm sure the audience which is listening to us right now, and the ones who would look at the recorded version of it later, will have a lot more probably to find out. I think you have really nudged their inquisitiveness vis-a-vis your line of work. So I mean, any closing remarks in case you would like to offer before we close?
I'm good. Thank you for hosting me. It was good interacting. Thank you for everyone who's joined in, taken time, as well as asked a lot of great questions. Appreciate it. Look forward to interacting again.
Perfect. So thank you so much for your time, Kilan, and yeah, we look forward to carrying on with this engagement.